Welcome to another episode of Talking Sense. We wanted to start the year off with a bang, talking about ABM and some of the latest and greatest trends in the ABM space. So who better to do that than Gary Survis of Insight Partners. So Gary, you have kind of an interesting role. Tell me a little bit about what you do at Insight.
Yeah, well, I'm an operating partner here, and as you might imagine, most investing firms have a deal side. They do all the investing. Many of the times they sit on a board or advisors to the CEO on a lot of strategic issues. But Insight really focuses as well on operating, and what we've set up are centers of excellence across all the levers that really make a successful software company. I like to say we have everything you need for a great software company except software. So we have a center of excellence for sales and product and talent and customer success, and I am an operating partner on the marketing center of excellence.
I like to call you a super CMO.
Okay.
You'll take it? You'll take it?
I'm good. I got a cape right over here. It's awesome.
I like to call you that because, in my role, I get to see marketing at Sixth Sense, and of course I'm, talking to other people, but you really have this purview across hundreds of companies. So maybe tell me a little bit about the Insight portfolio and the type of companies that you are working with.
Yeah, Insight prides itself in really being the leading scale-up company within the software space. And yes, we invest, but what we really do is help organizations scale up. And scale up really is a unique phase for an organization. You're beyond the startup, and you really need to understand how it is that this people process technology is going to scale up to get you to the next level. And Insight has this incredibly unique vantage point because we only invest in software, and we've been doing it, this year will be our 25th year, and we really understand both pattern recognition and trends and how to bring the right resources to help our portfolio companies truly scale up and be world leaders.
All right. Well, you found that looking at all of these portfolio companies, I think earlier you said about 170 right now, currently, that you and your team are working with, that ABM has been a critical part of scaling up.
Yep.
So tell me a little bit about what you've seen recently.
Yeah, I would start by saying, first of all, we don't call it ABM. We call it ABX, and the X stands for sales. It stands for customer success. It stands for insight selling. It stands for all the parts that account base can really be critical to an organization, and quite honestly, create super strong alignment between those things.
I love that. We talk about sales and marketing, and then I was trying to get everyone to say revenue team, but people felt the need to define sales and marketing. So I don't know if we're there yet, but we believe in the same thing.
Yes, indeed. And the thing that is fascinating to me is there's almost not a conversation I have with either an existing portfolio company or our new investments that doesn't at some level discuss account-based. As you know, super buzzy. And with that, a lot of misunderstanding, I think, in terms of what it's really about.
So what's like the biggest, when you hear someone talking about ABM or in our world ABX, where you're like, oh God, seriously?
Yeah.
Like what are some of it's definitely not this.
Well, my favorite, of course, is, I have a target account list, so clearly we're doing account-based marketing then. And I'm like, yeah, anyone can come up with a list of companies, but do you have an ideal customer profile? Have you really matched them against that? Do you really understand more so, not just that you have target accounts, but that you have an orchestrated approach to really hit those accounts? I like to talk about 3 levers that you're trying to get right with account base. You first need to understand how many touches you really need, 1, can do. 2, you need to figure out the order in which to do them. And lastly, what are those touches? Are you going to start out with, a whole lot of online advertising and then follow up with emails and then an outreach, or are you going to put a CEO letter in there? Are you going to have an event coming up? Are you going to be sending some snail mail to them? There are so many ways to do it, and it's that orchestration of account-based, which is really, the magic.
But I think that's where to use your term, scale up either comes or doesn't come, because we've all been accustomed to like a linear email-based nurture, right? When we think about touches, we think about email.
Yep.
And I think the key to ABM is much more personalized, orchestrated cadences or touches.
Yeah, absolutely. I think that we believe super strongly that an organization needs to really believe in account-based. They can't dabble in account-based. And it's important for them to say, look, this is our approach. We're going to identify these accounts. We're going to figure out what's relevant to them, what matters to them. We're going to understand how to communicate to them. And we look at it as not a monolithic approach as well. Sure, one-to-one is a great way to do account-based, but that's not the only way to do account-based. We talk about cohorts that are within there that you want to talk to, and sometimes just larger segments. And each of those can benefit from an account-based strategy. And so some people say, well, I can't do one-to-one marketing. This is way too much for me. So you don't have to have an effective account-based approach.
Yeah, I definitely feel like at the inception of account-based, it almost felt like it died on its weight a little bit and lost the momentum because people did think it was just one-to-one. I need to have like customized content. And then it's like, oh my gosh, there's no way I can do this. And I feel like now, as we look at 2020, it's about backing that off a bit and like tweaking those dials to be able to do it more at scale.
Yeah. So, as Gartner does with its hype cycle, there's not a major new technology that doesn't hit that trial of disillusionment and is, at this place where there's just so much promise and there's no way that it can live up to it. And so for us, we really try to be super real about what it is that you need to do, how to get into it, and understand I can do a crawl, walk, run with ABM before it is a major drain. I've gone in the wrong direction, and that's what we always talk about. But let's start with a pilot. Let's start learning about what it is for you, and then let's double down from that. I think I mentioned to you at one point, when you look at our portfolio, about a third of our portfolio is using ABM today actively. They're active users of account-based.
Would you say they're scaled?
Yes, totally scaled.
Okay.
But 75% of our portfolio is at some level from pilot on through full-on ABM. And the other thing that's super interesting, which I think when we surveyed our portfolio around this, we asked them, how happy are you with ABM? And so the ones that are in pilot, not that happy.
This is hard.
It's hard, and I'm not seeing the results yet, and I'm confused. But once they get into full on, 60% of them are super happy with what they're getting out of ABM, and that is an incredible sort of jump from one phase to the other. But it also shows you that it takes time, and it is a commitment. But it's so worth it because you get the right ROIs from this. We see in our portfolio companies that they're going to have higher ACVs with shorter selling cycles, and we've seen it over and over again. But it's not like you flip a switch and tomorrow magic happens. You got to do some work. You got to understand your market. And by the way, every market works a little differently. It's like I can't tell you that this worked here, that this is the number of touches you need to have to make your market work. You may need more. You may need less. You may need different kinds of assets. So part of that is that iterative process, and it is an incredibly iterative process.
So takeaway is it works.
Absolutely.
Stick with it.
Yep.
It's kind of like going to the gym in the new year.
Yes.
Kind of sucks those first few weeks back.
Exactly.
But once you're in shape, it feels a lot better.
Exactly.
And some of the specifics, average deal size, bigger deals, shorter sales cycles. Do you see like an overall increase in pipeline?
Absolutely. But here's the other part of this. When organizations were previously doing a pure volume velocity play, it's a hard discussion to have with a CEO or even the board who may not know all about ABM, that, you know what, our number of MQLs are going to go down. And,
It's okay.
let's not worry about that. What we really want to worry about is our conversion rates. What we really want to worry about is how our pipeline is growing, because we've actually focused on the accounts that represent the greatest LTV and the best opportunity for us. And it's a shift in thinking. It's different, and it involves some internal selling in order to get it right.
MQLs to me have been a disastrous for the marketing function.
The worst.
I feel like that's really what holds back a lot of these things. If you just don't care about those and you start specifically caring about qualified pipeline, it does make the conversation, the transition, a lot easier.
Everyone wants to talk. And when I talk and do interviews with CMOs, I always ask them, if I were to look at your dashboard, what's going to be on it? What are your KPIs? What am I going to see? And, I can tell a lot by the ones that tell me I'm tracking my MQLs versus I'm tracking, marketing's contribution to pipeline. Like that,
Win
to me,
rates,
these are the things that I can tell that they're more sophisticated. They're taking a view of marketing that is a very more modern approach.
Gotcha. So scale up. I love that term, scale up. Because our mission is to scale up ABX. That's something we're passionate about. And one of the things that you personally did and Insight Partners did was literally look high and low across companies, capabilities, technologies to help your portfolios scale up, but also when you were looking at who to invest in. Tell us a little bit about that process. What did you find?
Sure. So obviously I'm on the operating team, not the deal team. But when it comes to particular technology that folks on the operating team have experience in, we get brought into the process early. And we've been proponents about the account-based space for at least 3 years, talking about this emerging technology. But here's something which I'm sure you will agree with. If I said to you, tell me what a CRM program is, you could pretty much tell me that. And you could probably tell me pretty well what a marketing automation program is.
Yes.
But when I say, tell me what a piece of ABM software is,
it's email signature, it's direct mail, it's
online advertising, it's like the list goes on, and it's hard, especially if you're not a practitioner within the marketing space, to understand the complexity of what account-based is and what it means. And the other thing, which I think you know as well, if I said to you, I've looked at 6 Sense 2 years ago, it doesn't work.
I hate that.
It doesn't work. Like the program, the software that you were selling 2 years ago is nothing like what you're delivering today. And by the way, across the board within the account-based space.
Like I just kind of had a schooling with some of our partners, because I said, unless you're getting briefed, everybody on your team, minimum quarterly, probably monthly, you're out of date with what is happening.
Correct.
Not just at 6 Sense, I would assume everywhere.
Everywhere.
We'd have to be dropping product that frequently.
It is iterating super quick, and the capabilities are changing. So when we looked at the space, we knew we wanted someone who was absolutely laser focused in delivering results. Okay? And it's hard when you speak to different players in the space, not all of them have that focus and process. So we did a lot of interviews with customers to see satisfaction, and the satisfaction levels with 6 Sense are so much higher than any of the other competitors that we looked at. And the other part of this is, you talk about account-based and all the things it means. Intent today is a critical component of account-based. And if intent isn't weaved into it, not as sort of a bolt-on, but literally at the core of how you're delivering account-based intelligence, then you're missing out on really delivering what is the true promise of an account-based product.
Because if you think about the ABM space, we all got here a little differently.
Mm-hmm.
And
Yep.
we got to the space through data and insights. That's like
Right.
the core of what we do.
Yeah, and data and insights is, I hate to say it, it sounds like a throwaway term because everyone talks, oh, we've got data and insights and reporting and attribution and all these other things. But what people don't understand is that we're talking about not a marketing-based approach here. We're talking an organization-based approach. And so if you want to turbocharge your inside selling team and you want to turbocharge where your account executives are pointing their guns and you want to turbocharge how customer success is doing cross-sell and upsell, you need to take an account-based approach. And you need to have a way of knowing who are the right people to pay attention to. And there's some, by the way, you know this as well, there's some markets where I know my universe, perfect account base, like education. I know all the universities. I know all the hospitals. Nice little spaces. There are plenty of other markets that are very horizontal. And it is hard for you to know where it is you should be pointing your guns. And without that knowledge and ability to say, look, I want to do an account-based play, but I need some tools to help me get there and do this at scale, you can't if you don't have a tool that weaves that all together.
It's so funny. I do some advising too, and I was in a meeting and with a new hunting team. So pure hunting team, horizontal play as you described. And the head of sales was like, well, we have to pick our target account list. And, so we're thinking about doing that and da-da-da. And I said, why? You're a hunting team. Like, you have small ACVs. You need to be 3 calls and a close. They need to be ready.
Yep.
Like, why wouldn't you just go off the intent signal?
Yep.
That's come in every day. Those are the accounts you work. Why call on people that are under a rock?
Yeah, but again, talk about hype. Intent was a whole nother level of hype when it was predictive lead scoring, and everyone says, where's your crystal ball to be able to predict this stuff? And that went through a whole phase of like, no, this doesn't work, you can't do it. But the technology again has, just really come like leaps and bounds forward. And also just, the differences, people don't understand the differences between primary intent and secondary intent. There is a huge difference there.
Talk to us about that.
So
that's a good point.
And when you look at a primary intent product, as Sixth Sense is, it is really looking at very clear activity within your realm that you can track. Secondary intent is looking at other areas, whether web search or other tools or sites they're hitting and trying to intuit all these pieces. Now that can be important data. I'm not saying to ignore it. I'm saying that you want to get primary intent data that really shows that people are in market and that you can get reliability that's constantly learning and getting smarter about your customer base. And then at that time, you've got like a super great weapon to be able to leverage for your organization.
One of the stats I've heard, though, is only 13% of marketing and sales organizations have confidence in their data.
Yep.
And I think that's why second-party intent and third-party intent and being able to tap into a much bigger network of data is so critical for companies.
Yeah. I mean, look, in every organization, everyone is looking for a leg up. They want to know. If I say to you, one of my target accounts is Coca-Cola. Well, geez, like how am I going to figure that out?
Yeah, that's like 20 companies.
And so, if you're going to do an enterprise play, you need to pull in every signal from every place that you possibly can to inform who is in market, where are they in market, what division's in market, and then and I think we've spoken about this as well. It's then to say, great, I've got the Coca-Cola bottlers of New York as a customer. Like now, how do I use that to get more Coke and do the kind of total organization-wide selling efforts that you want to use. How do you leverage that? How do you take existing customers and really become not just one data point in there? I always laugh, when you go to a website and you see the logos on there, and you see
it's the same one. Everyone sells to everyone. Yeah, everyone sells to
it's
Coke.
so they're not selling to every division of Coke or every division of JP Morgan or every division of Hewlett Packard, and that is the point. And so I think that again, people fail to realize everyone is very new logo focused, which is great. But the power of account-based as it comes to cross-sell and upsell, and as it comes to being able to take a given organization and really penetrate it is super powerful.
So, predictions.
Yes.
ABM predictions.
Yes.
ABX predictions.
Yes.
Excuse me.
It's all right.
What do you see happening in the next year?
So we've been on this train, and it's been sort of slowly accelerating up this hill. And what I really believe is that it is just going to continue to get faster, and the adoption is going to be wider. And people, I think you may have found this as well. When a few years ago, you were looking for ABM professionals, like there weren't any. Like there was a few people dabbled in it and did a few things. We're starting to see much more of a class of marketer that is really an account-based professional that really understands how to take an organization and really leverage account-based, leverage the technology, understands the tech stack, understands the differences between the different tools. I sometimes have conversations, and I don't mean to say this in a bad, older CMOs, and you can tell that they just read the most recent report and are trying to understand. They don't really understand the difference between a demand base and a terminus and a 6 Sense and what they deliver. And if you don't really understand where these particular products spike and what they do really well, then you're probably going to be wasting a whole lot of money. And I think part of the success of 6 Sense is that they understand the market so well. We love the fact that when you look at a 6 Sense, that the customer isn't going in there not understanding what they're getting. They understand exactly what they're getting. And you guys work relentlessly to deliver on that promise. And that's the sort of beautiful thing that we loved about 6 Sense, as opposed to a whole lot of the competitors that were out there.
Well, thank you for that. We're really excited to be working with you guys. And we've got a pretty bold vision, which we shared with you. And so I think the next year, I see the product space being the most exciting.
Yep.
And how the category comes together. Because you talked earlier about it isn't just an email and a snail mail. It's all of these things that must be orchestrated. And that's what we see as a big part of the next frontier.
Yeah, I agree with you. And I, for the folks that are going to be successful leveraging ABX in their organization, it's going to be the ones that understand that I can put together a great plan that works for this particular ICP. But as my business evolves, as the places that I want to go changes, I've got to constantly be getting in there, revising this, testing. If an organization doesn't have a testing mentality around account-based.
Love it. So I want to transition and talk about just marketing in general, particularly coming off due diligence,
Yes.
which was fun.
Yes.
Thank you for that.
For everyone. For everyone.
That's great.
You only got to do it with one company. We get to do it with, 50, 60 companies a year.
Well, I want to talk about that because I haven't even seen my results yet. So, we'll see if I pass the test or not. But I think it's an interesting process, and I think it's valuable for marketers to understand what you and your team are looking for.
Yeah.
Like, what makes you say, okay, we got it, they're doing this right, or whoa, we've got to pulse check that.
Yeah, so I think one of the realities of diligence that we always say is, marketing will never kill a deal. Like, we will never not do a
That's
deal.
That's why we got it.
We will never not do a deal because of marketing. But marketing many times represents upside in our deal thesis, because if it is not being done well, we will say, look,
there's a lot of opportunity.
There's a lot of opportunity. I think for you guys in particular, I mean, look, when you're a MarTech company, if you can't be doing marketing well,
like, screwed.
it's bad news for everyone.
Yeah.
And so it's clear that when you go into this is not your typical sort of investment for us, nor, by the way, are we always involved at the level that we are in a diligence. When it's in MarTech, we are super involved.
Right.
And so when you look at a company like you, we looked at the people you've put together. We've looked together at all the technology you've put in place around your technology. Mm-hmm. We look around all of the programs you have. We looked at your results. We looked at all those pieces, and it's a strong organization. I mean, that,
thank God we passed, guys. Talking sense will live on.
It's the least of our concerns in an investment in a MarTech company is if you have marketing that's working, that's good. We've got lots of other ideas in terms of where you're going to scale up from, but marketing is not the huge opportunity we're looking for here.
Okay. So one of the things that you guys gave us, and my team is totally geeked out about, was your spend benchmarks.
Yep.
I found them super valuable. Can you share a little bit with the Talking Sense community?
Sure.
That how to use benchmarks and why these are maybe a little different than others.
Yeah. So as I sort of mentioned at one point, we sit at this very unique precipice of being able to look at software companies across a large spectrum. Mm-hmm. And we get to see that, there are lots of different levers for lots of different companies that are meaningful, and I'll talk about that in a moment. But it's also like the understanding of what a benchmark is and what a benchmark isn't.
But CFOs love benchmarks.
Absolutely. And I think benchmarks need to be given with context. And so if all you do is go to Serious Decisions and say, please give me my representative 8 companies that I'm going to benchmark my conversion rates against, it's literally irrelevant. Okay? But when you take, on the other hand, sort of our approach, which is almost the anti-Serious Decisions, and say, look, we have this really bespoke group of companies. We can go in there and we can then understand, for all of our companies, what the number is, which is wonderful.
It's interesting.
But what is really interesting is to know, for companies with a similar ASP, what is it that you're seeing? For companies that are a high grower, what are you likely to see? For a company that has an ARR of X level, what are you likely to see?
I think that's so important because, like, if you think about a go-to-market motion and marketing's involvement, if it's a heavy enterprise sale, that is a very different kind of marketing to sales relationship versus the high velocity one call close.
Absolutely. And go-to-market is one of those other cuts that we look at, because if you're an enterprise-heavy customer, you're likely to have high ASPs and long selling cycles. And in trying to compare what you're spending and how you're spending your money with someone who's a totally self-serve model,
right,
online, fill out a form, get my software, is going to be, again,
ludicrous.
Irrelevant.
Yeah. And
that's why I say, yes, definitely give your CFO the benchmarks, but give benchmarks with context. This is a benchmark that's more relevant for us because. And then, of course, the CFO would like to use the right numbers, not the wrong numbers. And that's why we talk about this all the time.
What I liked, though, were some of your ratios.
Yeah.
Because often the ratios are just, total sales and marketing combined, which that's a huge primordial soup, right? And then you'd get your marketing allocation. And sometimes people will ask people versus programs and maybe look at like brand versus demand and some high level things. But I thought your approach of looking to like net new logos versus customer was interesting. So maybe talk a little bit about that.
Yeah. So even though it's a relatively homogeneous group of companies, they're all very different. If I said to you, are you having a user event? Well, that's going to change your entire cost structure of marketing versus one of our portfolio companies does not have a user event.
True.
Another thing that goes on as well, and we find this, is some organizations are all about cross-sell, upsell. Some organizations are all about new logo. Well, we better understand how to take a look at those things. And one of the key pieces here, again, because it's our survey, we get to make the rules. And so the definition of what goes into which bucket is super important as well, because for example, SDRs are sometimes in marketing, sometimes not in marketing. Well, we took it out. We don't want your SDR costs in your marketing costs because we want to be able to compare across our universe. And so these are the kinds of things that we've been able to think hard about in trying to give our portfolio companies super relevant numbers.
So 3 stats from a spend benchmark that everybody should know.
So you should absolutely know, first and foremost, your people versus program spend. And if it's out of balance.
What's out of balance,
in
your opinion?
In my opinion, you should be spending more on program than on people. We have seen organizations where that's not the case.
Oh, interesting.
And that is for us an issue that really needs to be addressed, because that means you're probably overstaffed for what you're doing, and it makes no sense to us. So that's one. 2, we definitely want to look at your marketing spend against net new. That is critical for us, because new bookings for many organizations are the lifeblood of the organization. And there's also much more of a direct one-to-one with the idea I'm going to spend money and I'm going to get new bookings. Don't look at your total revenue number, which a lot of organizations do. That totally gets you
sideways,
off kilter very much. And it's also, I find, and again, we can talk about all the stats. I love them all. But
I love all my children equally.
But I think one of the more interesting ones also always to keep track of is, to your point about sales and marketing spend, to keep track of the percentage of your total sales and marketing spend that marketing represents and what sales represents. And, people talk about CAC all the time. CAC is a great macro number, but I actually want to look at MCAC and SCAC, because while it's nice to do this mashup, I can't really get to root cause of who's being more efficient or not being efficient in terms of the spend. And if someone just looks at your CAC and says we need to cut marketing spend, but in reality it's an underperforming sales organization and the head of sales didn't know that, then no one's being served in terms of how that is working.
So what is a good MCAC ratio?
So generally speaking,
with a grain of salt.
So again, we look at, as a part of overall sales and marketing spend, call it 25% of all sales and marketing spend, marketing.
Love it. Thank you. All right, let's transition again.
Yes.
I want to know about Green Gary.
Green Gary, yes.
I've been thinking of you as a super CMO.
Yes.
I didn't know about this Green Gary side.
It's my side hustle.
All right.
It's all good.
Everyone needs a side hustle.
It is. When you talk about a career, it's never a straight line. It's lots of different things that you've done. And there was a part of my career where I started to get engaged in sustainable businesses. I had an event business, which was called Go Green Displays, and it was all
because displays can be
so
wasteful. I mean, it kills every show. I'm like,
yes. And in the bad old days, it was even worse. They've gotten a lot more attuned to trash. They've got a lot more attuned to carbon from the events. They've got a lot more attuned to lighting and flooring and all those things, which is great. And I also worked in the solar industry, and those sort of pieces were interesting to get me to think about sustainability in business. I am not your granola guy like that. I'm not wearing Birkenstocks and I'm not doing the granola thing.
I mean, you work at a venture equity company.
and the truth of the matter is I am though like super attuned to the environment. I am super attuned to how business can have such a positive impact. When I was out at Dreamforce this year, I got an opportunity to spend some time with a gentleman who is launching a new product offering from Salesforce called the Sustainability Cloud. And
cool.
And you know, Benioff is a poster child for all of the goodness that a corporation can do when it has purpose and values and all of those things. And so they've really thought about this idea about how organizations are struggling to deal with the data, struggling to report on their carbon footprint, struggling to do all the reporting that needs to happen. And so they've really started to focus on this product. And I've had the honor and privilege of being able to teach about business and sustainability at Wharton. And it's an incredible opportunity because when you see that nexus of how organizations can do the right thing, but also do so to make money. Like there's no evil in making money. By the way, many students don't know that. And immediately like assume if you've made money on it, you've done something wrong. But you know, you look at great organizations like Unilever, and you look at companies that have been able to really make it core to their overall strategy. How sustainability can be a driver not just of good, but also of profit is incredible. And it's not just like a feel-good thing, it's a business thing. And that's really my message around it.
All right, so it's time for my favorite question.
Yes.
We learn more from our screw-ups than our successes.
Yes.
So, colossal fuck-up. I mean, just the worst.
So, it's an ABM story.
Oh,
and it was early days in ABM. And we really felt, as part of our job, was we really needed to sell it. We needed to sell it big.
I feel like, you got to do this.
Right. We went in there and we put all these great stats from Gartner and Topo, and like, you know, you're going to see like, you know, unicorns and bunny rabbits, and it's going to be the most amazing thing that has ever happened to this organization. And this particular CMO, who was relatively young, took all of this.
She bought it.
Indeed. And comes back to present the plan for next year. And I'm looking through the plan over here, and I see this line, and it just says ABM. I'm like, so what is the ABM revenue source here? And she goes, well, you know, you told us that we could expect to see, you know, higher ASPs, higher conversion rates. So what we basically did was we knew the number we needed to get to and just plugged in that number on the ABM line. I'm like, oh dear Lord,
yeah.
You just didn't do that. Did you present this to the board yet? Because that's not correct.
So it's like the magic plug is ABM?
ABM.
Like, that's not well. Magic does. ABM.
Yes. So after that, we sort of ratcheted back the whole selling thing and more go with the realistic view of how to take ABM and ramp up. And yeah, that was beautiful.
You're like, I've created a monster.
Exactly. Exactly.
Love it. Love it. Well, it has been such an honor and pleasure to have you on the show, Gary. I can't wait to work with you more. I've already learned so much. I've got my little spend benchmark report dog-eared and all marked up. The team loves it. I know we're going to learn a lot together, and I know our listeners are going to learn a lot from this episode. So thanks for coming on.
Awesome. Thank you. It was great.